Life can be likened to a voyage, with moments of tranquility, gentle winds, and shining sun, occasions to be grateful for. Perhaps you find yourself in one such serene stretch at the moment, sailing smoothly. If that's the case, relish it as a divine gift. Yet, there are times when the winds pick up and the skies darken. Sometimes we unexpectedly find ourselves in the midst of a severe storm. This is just the way life is. You may be in such a storm now, one you never planned for, and you wonder if you'll make it through. It might be a physical tempest or a relational one with your spouse, children, parents, or a friend. A cherished relationship could be in serious trouble. Your financial stability might be threatened by mounting debt, or it could be an emotional storm, an internal battle against depression, anxiety, or fear. In Matthew chapter 8, we find the disciples facing a literal storm on the Sea of Galilee. Starting from verse 23, we learn that Jesus led them into that boat, and they followed his plan to cross the lake. It's crucial to note that they entered the storm while obeying God's will. This teaches us a valuable lesson. Storms can occur even when we are following Jesus. If you're in a storm and wondering where you went wrong, don't automatically assume that you've strayed from God's path. Some storms are consequences of our actions, but often they arise despite our faithful obedience. The disciples found themselves in a storm because they were obeying Jesus. Why would Jesus lead them into a storm? Because he wanted them to grow. Consider this. When have you experienced the most growth in your life? Was it during calm seas and smooth sailing, or when you confronted a storm? Difficult situations, permitted or caused by God, can be opportunities for growth that you won't encounter elsewhere. A calm sea doesn't produce skilled sailors. So, if you want a fulfilling life, you should expect to face challenges. However, remember that these challenges are not meant to harm you, but to facilitate your growth. Ultimately, the purpose of a storm is to make you stronger. You'll discover things in storms that you couldn't learn in any other way. It's crucial to realize that Jesus can be trusted in life's storms, but the only way to truly understand this is by going through those storms. If you've never encountered difficulties, you wouldn't know that God can overcome them. God is the master of winds and waves, and he allows or causes storms for specific reasons. A shallow theology assumes that following God means a trouble-free life, but this is not the case. We will face difficulties. The first thing to remember when facing adversity is that God's providence is always at work. You are governed by his plan, and he allows these challenges to help you grow. The disciples didn't anticipate the storm, but they were in God's will when they faced it. If you're in a storm, remember that you are not alone. Jesus is in your boat, in your life. He promises never to leave you or forsake you. Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1 and 2, assures us that when we pass through waters and rivers, God is with us, ensuring we are not overwhelmed. You may be in a storm, but Jesus is right there with you. In the story from Mark, we see Jesus calming the storm with just 3 words: "Peace, be still." This demonstrates that Jesus is not intimidated by your storm. While it may seem overwhelming to you, Jesus is unfazed. When you encounter a storm, shift your focus from the turmoil around you to Jesus, who can bring peace even in the midst of chaos. Jesus expects you to trust him in the storm. The disciples' greatest threat was not the storm itself, but their lack of faith. Victory over fear lies in having faith, even if it's as small as a mustard seed. You don't need extraordinary faith. You need faith in an extraordinary God. Jesus promises to bring you through your storm. He said, "Let us go to the other side," and they did. You will make it through your storm because Jesus is your solution. Your faith can overcome fear, and Jesus is always present to calm your storm. There's hope even in the midst of the storm. God's promise is that the sun will shine again. Remember that you are not alone. You belong to God. And He has never promised a life without problems, but He has promised to be there when you face them. Storms may be intense, but they are not eternal. Mark Twain once walked outside with a friend during a rainstorm. When asked if he thought it would stop raining, Mark Twain replied, "It always does. Just as rainstorms pass, so do the storms of life. They may be challenging, but they are temporary. The dawn of a new day is on the horizon, and the sun will shine once more." For those of you currently facing a storm, consider this: who is in the boat with you? It's none other than Jesus. He's present in your life, in your boat, and you would do well to remember who He is and what He is capable of doing. He still has the power to calm the storms, and not just the external ones, but also the storms that rage within your heart. If you are in the middle of a storm, just like the disciples in that boat, remember that Jesus is right there with you. Here's the key: who's in the boat with you? It's Jesus. He's in your life, and you don't have to face the storm alone. He's not distant or indifferent to your struggles. He's intimately acquainted with them. In fact, Jesus isn't intimidated by your storm. While it may appear impossible, unending, and devastating to you, it doesn't frighten Him in the slightest. As you grapple with the turmoil, Jesus is not anxious. He's not anxious because He knows that the storm doesn't define your future. He does. During the disciples' distress, Jesus remained undisturbed to the point of taking a nap. While the disciples were gripped by panic, Jesus was peacefully asleep. This reveals an essential truth: Jesus is not troubled by your storm. To you, it might seem like an insurmountable challenge, but to Jesus, it's just another opportunity to display His authority and power. So when you find yourself in a storm, never forget that Jesus is right there in the boat with you. You're not alone. He's not just a passenger. He's the captain of your vessel. The disciples realized that they couldn't handle the storm by themselves. They shifted their focus from the raging elements to Jesus, recognizing that He was their source of hope and salvation. When you face life's storms, turn your attention to Jesus. Seek Him, cry out to Him, and invite Him into your situation. In the midst of your most terrifying storms, Jesus is the only one who can bring true peace. He has the power to calm the external turmoil and quiet the internal anxieties that threaten to overwhelm you. Jesus can still speak peace into your life, even when it seems like everything is falling apart. He can calm the chaos, still the restlessness, and bring order to the disorderly. Trust in His presence and rely on His promises. He is unchanging, steadfast, and able to provide the peace that surpasses all understanding. Furthermore, Jesus expects you to trust Him in the storm. He addressed the disciples' fear with a gentle rebuke, saying, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" This reveals two crucial points. First, the root of their problem was fear, and second, the solution was faith. The greatest threat to the disciples' lives wasn't the storm itself. It was their lack of belief. Faith is the antidote to fear. Even a small amount of faith, as tiny as a mustard seed, can move mountains. You don't need to possess superhuman faith. You simply need to have faith in a great, all-powerful God. The issue isn't the size of your faith, it's the object of your faith. Place your trust in Jesus, who can calm the wildest storms. Jesus promises to bring you through your storm. In verse 35 of the same passage, He said, "Let us go to the other side." He didn't promise them a smooth journey without getting wet, without challenges or moments of fear. He simply assured them that they would reach the other side. The same applies to you. You're going to make it through your storm. The storms in your life may be turbulent, and the waves may threaten to engulf you. But remember that Jesus is in control. He is sovereign over the storms, and His purpose for you is to reach the other side, stronger and wiser. Trust in His guidance, even when you can't see the way. In conclusion, storms in life are inevitable, but they are not insurmountable. They may be daunting, but they are not permanent. They may be fierce, but they are not final. With Jesus in your boat, you have the ultimate source of hope and peace. So, take heart, hold on to your faith, and remember that Jesus is with you, guiding you through the storms and bringing you to the other side, where the sun will shine again.